Hey everybody, Dave Putz here from JKP Holdings. We have a special guest today, more than one. And what we're going to be doing is introducing some new investors who've been in the space for millions of years, right? Actually not. So alongside me, we have a few special guests here, really brand new to the space of note investing. Something we haven't done in a while. But we wanted to kind of share with everybody what it's like to go through your first asset purchase. And it's nervous, it's scary. We don't know where to go, where to turn, where to look for assets. But what we're trying to do today is kind of share other stories of their first purchase, of their first maybe one or two purchases, what their story, what was the journey like, and kind of relate to things like that. So it's pretty interesting to see that this is going to be something that we've not done before, and we look forward to hearing from people. So again, Dave Putz here from JKP Holdings. We're streaming live the Facebook group as well as LinkedIn. You can take a look at us on jkpholdings.com, and we also have a big YouTube channel. So take a look at that, share and like it, all that good stuff, and from there. So today, I have Brian, Larissa, I'm Maria as well. So welcome, guys. I appreciate you jumping in on a Friday afternoon, morning for some of you guys, and joining me today to kind of share your journey of note investing. So welcome. I want to start off with asking you guys what your background was. I know you guys are all gurus in real estate and everything else. You've done a million deals and everything else, and you've converted over to notes to take over the world. So Lisa, Maria, what was your background? What's your history like? What did you get into? How did you get into notes?
All right. Well, hi, everyone. My background is in clinical research. And so I've been doing that for the past 5 years. But just recently, I was curious. I needed something else. So, everyone talks about real estate. It's a good investment and everything. So I started doing my research about a couple of years ago. And I thought about, the natural, conventional real estate methods, but it didn't really appeal to me. And then I came across the idea of notes. And so I attended a workshop that lasted about a month. And so then I knew that it's something I could see myself doing. So that's just how I started. And just from there, and then, it was so well structured and everything was laid out so perfectly for me. And so I figured that why not continue this? And the workshop was based basically on non-performing second mortgage notes. And so I just went on with that. And I thought it was great. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Larissa, what was your experience? How did you get introduced to it? What were you doing before that? Can you share a little about that?
Yeah, my name's Larissa, and I am a stay-at-home mom. I worked in the financial software business or industry, I guess, for 10 years before I started staying home with my kids. A couple years ago, we decided to travel full-time, and so we live in our RV and traveled around. So when we did that, I rented out my house in Oklahoma, and so kind of stuck my toe in the water for real estate, being a landlord, but it's not my favorite activity, being a landlord, but I thought I wanted to do something like that, similar to what Marie said. And so I joined the Bigger Pocket forums and was following that. And that's where I saw the note investing, and I took a deep dive researching that for several months, just trying to gather everything I could. I did attend a couple of weekend workshops, and from there, I did reach out. I found a mentor that I've been working with to kind of take me to the next level, but that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome. Brian, what was your background before getting into notes, and how'd you get into notes?
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me too. I'm a truck driver by trade. I have been for 20 plus years. And during that time, I was consuming a lot of content on podcasts and such in real estate. And in 2018, talked my parents into buying a rental property, and I would manage it. And during that time as well, I was also learning about notes I did a private loan to a friend of mine, basically a debt consolidation loan, if you will, through my self-directed IRA. And then also with the intent of getting into real estate notes
Okay.
as well. Just, I was listening to about 40 hours of podcasts a week on all sorts of topics, but mainly real estate, side hustle, that sort of thing. And so the rental property, actually, we just sold that earlier, or actually a month ago yesterday, and was able to put a nice check in my parents' hand for that, thanks to the current market. And so now I'm focused all on notes now.
Okay. Awesome. So, Maria, where did you begin looking for notes? I know one of the first questions we would get is, where can I buy a note from? How did you go through that process? What was some of the things you started off with and looking for? Where did you find the first assets?
Okay. So during my workshop, or at the end of my workshop, they provided a list of sites to look for notes. So that's pretty much how I started. I just followed those links and looked on those websites, including PaperStack was one of them. And the one I actually ended up buying my notes from was a site that didn't have the notes listed. I just signed up for, whenever they have notes available, they would email them to me. So that's how I ended up finding my notes. But I did look. I had a list of sites. I had it made pretty much.
Okay. So it's so weird because finding an asset, once you stumble across them, you start saying, "Oh, I can find them all over the place." But I also find the problem is that once you start looking, you get everyone in the world that has a note. They don't all have notes. Some are brokers.
Right.
What did you go? Where would you go through that process of making sure you're buying from a legit seller? That's hard, right? That's figuring out.
Right.
Did you come across a lot of people saying, "I have a note for sale," and you found out they didn't?
So I didn't go for individuals.
Okay.
I went for, I guess agencies or some real estate. What do you call them?
Brokers?
Brokers. Yeah, I didn't go for individuals. I saw some people listed theirs on Facebook, in Facebook groups and everything, and nothing wrong with that. But I just figured, from my first experience, I would like to, to get started with at least where there's already a system set up, and I'll just follow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Marissa, what was your story like? What was your first note? Where did you find it? What did you look for? How did you go across that?
All right. So I was.
Let me see, Larissa, what was her story? What was her background? How did she get to where did she find her first stuff?
So I mentioned I've been working with a mentor. So I definitely have been browsing all the online resources, PaperStack was mentioned, things like that. But through networking and through my mentors, actually where I got my first note from. So he had resources and people that he already had connections with and was able to find one. It was a list of assets, so we looked through them and found one that met my criteria. And that the person that I bought it from was also a well-known name that I had heard of through just online communities and things. So that felt like a safe place. Definitely a fear to come across someone who isn't legit. And I kind of have at least a plan in place to do a little research on a person, just through the community forums, Facebook groups, see if they're active, see if they're out there or anything like that.
Are they legit, right? Are they who they say they are?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when you went through that process, what was some of the things you learned during that process?
Well, leading up to it, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp of what the process would be like just from research and everything, but you never know until you actually do it.
Sure.
So that was a really great learning experience just to go through the actual process. But I guess just the order of events, once you make the bid and then whether they counter or accept, and then like reviewing the full collateral and I don't know, like the time frame that those things actually take, you know, days or weeks or things like that. It was interesting to go through the actual process, I guess.
So, Brian, what was your experience like finding that first asset? Did you go through multiple assets to get to that one, or did you find that first one and jump on top of it? Like, was it something you liked about it that you just went over it and grabbed a hold of it?
I looked at a lot of resources first, like you get on email lists and, you know, the occasional tape that you get sent to you, but that seems daunting and overwhelming. You know, it's just a list of addresses and unpaid balances. And it's like, where the heck do I start? Yeah. And so when I first started looking through online resources, FCI was still, had a portal for buying notes. And then I was looking at Notes Direct as well.
Yep.
But then again, with Notes Direct, it was like, okay, now I can at least see a picture of it, but it still seems like, where's the rest of the information and what's my next step from there? Yeah. And then I got onto PaperStack, and that just seemed like for the newer note investor that it could guide you through, and this is your next step. I love their timeline. You know, this is what goes now, and the buyer has to do this, seller has to do this. And so I would look a lot on PaperStack because I knew I had a good grasp on whether the note would make me enough money. But then again, it's that whole due diligence side of things. So had a little bit of paralysis by analysis there. And, you know, then I eventually just found I had been looking at lower balance notes, found one and reached out, and, you know, was that, first bid that I sent in was accepted, and, you know, the ball started rolling from there.
Cool. So, Maria, when you got into that first note, what about that note was something that you felt comfortable with diving more into it? What was about the note? Was it that it was an easy, detailed note? Was it the numbers worked well? Was it in a state you liked? What about it was the most attractive?
Right. So I bought my first two notes together. So I bought like two right off the gate. And so they met my criteria as far as like they were non-performing, there were second mortgage notes, and the numbers did make sense. And also my bid was accepted at the amount that I wanted it to be accepted. I mean, within that range. So that worked out. That's why I decided to buy them.
So with that being comfortable, so where was it that note, those two notes, mm-hmm. were you looking for that particular kind of asset and narrowed down, like, I'm looking for this particular thing, and I narrowed everything down to a bunch that labeled this? Or were you open to, what'd you narrow down from? What was your filters, I guess, the best word for it?
So I was looking exactly for that because that's what I was trained for. And I was not willing to go off script, especially not with the first couple of notes. Yeah, so I went exactly for that, and luckily I was able to find it. It took a little bit of time, but it worked out. Yeah.
So, Larissa, what was your experience? Did you filter down based on the experience you had, your mentor, or were you given, hey, listen, we'll look at these three, and narrow down? How was your first experience, and what were you looking for?
My focus right now is on performing first. So that was definitely like a filter. Like I'm not interested in non-performing at this time. I have a handful of states that I was really focusing in on. So those are my criteria. Also, I have a limited amount of funds. So the price range, the unpaid balance was definitely a determining factor. It was important to me to have a certain payments and payment amount. And this one's particularly, it was a reperforming note. And so they had like ACH payments already scheduled. And so that like made me feel a little more comfortable, that they felt a little more committed to be, payments going in automatically each month. So I jumped on it.
Okay, cool. So that's a big thing for a lot of people is the payment amount, right? Because your servicer will kill that amount, right? If people don't know with a $100 payment. Hey, fellow note investor, are you looking to learn the basics of note investing so you can get started? However, you don't want to spend a few hundreds or thousands of dollars and hours online on some training program? Have you thought about attending a notes conference? However, you don't want to spend the money or the time away from your family. Well, we have a tremendous beginners video series of 20 different topics, with each video being less than 15 minutes. This means each video is less fluff and direct to the content. Visit www.jkpholdings.com/beginner-series to learn more. Again, www.jkpholdings.com/beginner-series. And you're paying $15, $20, $30 a month, or $95 for non-performer, right? In certain situations, you have a $100 a month payment. There goes your investment, right? There goes your profits. That's struggling, right? And we talk a lot. I know a lot of people talk in the space buy based on percentages, UPB and BPO. And if you run numbers based on that all those factors don't come in. But if you really run numbers based on your returns and figuring that out, you realize quickly all these expenses now drop your return down, and you make sure you bid based on that number now. I'm sure you guys seen our calculator and our process, thing like that. But you got to look at that kind of stuff. So I hope that helps, right? So Brian, what was your first experience? Where did you, what made these assets stand out amongst all the other ones you looked at?
The one that I ended up purchasing was, my criteria was very wide. I was looking at first, seconds, performing, non-performing, contract for deeds, mortgages, the non-performings. And Marie, kudos to you for going after second non-performings. To me, that just seemed like if I make the investment and it doesn't work out, then I'm really just out flat. Yeah. So I focused on, I ended up going with a contract for deed. It said it was performing, the payment exactly like you said, $100 a month. And to kind of fast forward a little bit, after we closed on the whole thing, then I got the call from the guy that sold it to me. He's like, yeah, I just want to touch base and tell you a little bit about the note. And so that concerned me a little bit. It has ended up turning out positive for the whole thing. But those were the things that I was worried about. I was more focused on the payment and thought, okay, $100, I'll make my money back in 5 to 6 years, which was decent for me. But then again, you take out that $30 a month for servicing, and
yeah,
you're pretty much, so fast forward a little bit, I'm handling the payments now myself because I've contacted the borrower, and that's been a bit of a roller coaster too.
So you did it through the online portals, which is really easy to use, right? It was different from using a spreadsheet. And a lot of people who aren't spreadsheet friendly find it so much easier, right? So when you looked at things like that, what was the one thing, and Maria, I know you didn't do, everything Brian didn't know that, but what made the way you bought it easy? Was there anything easy about it? Maria, was there something simple, or was every step an education?
You mean like education about like the process?
Yeah, the process of, was there anything that was easy? Like, oh, well, wiring the money was easy, or, blindly, right? That's the first time you do things. running numbers was easy. Was there anything easy or hard that stood out, like that was the hardest part of the process for you?
The hardest part of the process was that fear, because I didn't have help with the collateral file at first. So I was afraid that to miss something, like what if I miss something and then that, I throw the entire process off, or, but it ended up working out, and wiring the money was definitely easy. As soon as I contacted the bank and they just walked me through that process. The number part was fine. I didn't have too much of a hard time with that because I had that set up too. And it was definitely an experience, but I didn't get stuck too much. I had the resources to make it pretty smooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Larissa, what was your experience, right? Was there something that stood out that was easy?
I mean, honestly, I was pretty handheld. My mentor's amazing. And so any questions I had, he was like right there. So it went really smoothly. And even he was like, well, that was the smoothest I've probably ever experienced. So probably have it coming for me. But it was just, every step was just outside my comfort zone, like even making the bid, or, like each step was just a little bit of discomfort to work through. But then now I feel confident on the other side to say, yeah, I can do this. Like even, called a real estate agent to give me like a CMA, and all that was just brand new to me. So
Getting on a phone
once
call with that
was
agent,
hard.
right? Getting on a phone with an
Yeah.
agent and they're going, this property is not listed for sale. What do you mean?
Yes.
Buying it.
Yeah, they're like, what are you talking about? So yeah,
Yeah,
that was
this
nervous
goes
for me.
I'm not listening, I'm hanging up, right?
Yeah, I got definitely, like, I think I went through 4 people because they wouldn't actually respond. They're like, I'll get back to you. It's like, right.
So it's funny because you say that, and did you buy BPO?
No, I didn't do a BPO. It was performing, so I just kind of wanted like the CMA from other properties.
Kudos, right? Because the CMA is really the most important thing, and the pictures. Make sure the house is standing and give me some data points, right? Because a lot of agents don't know anything else to do. They don't understand the investment side of things. We're getting to a few questions on Facebook right now, and one of the questions was asked about what was your expectation for return? What was your expectation of your return, annual return, Larissa? What was that number you were shooting for, or were you just kind of hoping and praying?
Honestly, my range was like 12 to 16% is really what I shoot for.
Okay.
And that's just based on, reading articles and, different sources giving slightly different ranges. So that's just kind of where I landed.
Okay. Cool. Brian, was there a spot in this that was easy or hard for you that was good education? And were you shooting for a certain return?
On paper, I saw that there was going to be a profit there. My purchase price was $5,400 and the unpaid balance was $77. So I knew if it paid out, I'd at least make that, and it was like a 9% note.
Cool.
So, I knew there was some profit there. Again, minus the $30 a month from servicing, but I figured if I could have just gone through the process, that first one was going to be, just my initial jump in.
Sure.
Start to go through the steps, even if it didn't make money. I knew that down the road there'd be more that would make money. So now I'm getting used to looking at a note and working with the financial calculator, saying, okay, this purchase price is going to give me a 14%, return.
Yeah.
And so it's just as I build that education, I had a broad base, and now I'm, starting to build up that knowledge and how to work with it and how to really look at it.
So when you looked at these assets and you figured out the numbers you're hoping for, kind of figuring things out, what was the biggest surprise, Brian, that you found out that you didn't realize, didn't expect?
Some of them were the difference between their asking price and the unpaid balance.
Okay.
And I almost went into it sometimes like, why are they giving this much of a discount? Or this one's been online for 30 days.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with it. My first bid got accepted. There must be, there's a reason why nobody else is going after this one.
Yeah.
So, those
All
thoughts
of
always
those
go
thoughts.
through. Yeah, exactly. You can't help but have those thoughts go through your head. It's like, okay, this one's been on for a month. Why hasn't anybody jumped on it?
Right.
And you kind of find out afterwards, maybe some of the reason. But I think I was kind of thinking about this before we got on, like the steps that I took. If I was telling somebody how to go through the steps of buying a note, I would tell them not to do what I did, because I think I went from bid to like final accepted offer, within a day or so, and look through the digital collateral file. I never ordered a title search or anything. And, so the guy that I bought it from afterwards, like, well, I probably would have if I were you. It's like, okay, check that box for next time. And, that I still am in contact with the guy that I bought it from.
Cool.
First. I think you know him, and Jamie is the guy that I bought it from, and he's been great ever since.
Cool.
I'll reach out to him on Messenger, ask him some questions, and so that has been kind of funny. That luckily, I think it's total luck that it has worked out the way it has for me.
Sure.
Because now the unpaid balance is actually down to less than what I paid for it.
Oh, wow.
So for several reasons. So, but
Maria, let's rewind before you bought that note. Your future self talking to your past self. What would have been one thing you wish you knew before making that journey through your first purchases?
I wish I knew how difficult, I'm gonna confess now, I wish I knew how difficult it was to get the note to perform again.
Okay.
Because it's been a challenge.
It sounds easy, right? Just get the borrower on the phone, get the service.
Right.
You got this thing
just call
performing.
him.
Well, yeah, like from the course that I wanted, the workshop that I attended, it sounded easy, but I didn't know exactly what to expect, like how it would actually turn out, in real life. So now I know I'm experiencing it. It's I know it's definitely manageable, but it's taking a while to get there. But I'll just be patient.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because some people have different experiences, and for most people, we all talk about it being possible to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a modification happened. I know a bunch of people have bought notes, and because the other lender didn't reach out, didn't do whatever, or the servicer was not that good, switching it over, that person called up like, I've been trying to make payment forever.
Right.
Sounds good. Doesn't always happen that way, right? Non-performing.
Right.
So it sounds to me as you should have planned the fact of the worst case scenario being a foreclosure or not performing, then hoping it performed. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Right, because actually, I honestly, maybe I should have thought about foreclosure ahead of time, because my goal actually was to get the note reperforming to then flip it.
Sure.
That was my exit strategy, and then use that capital to purchase more notes that I would keep.
So it sounds to me, and I'm going to clarify what I'm understanding, is that when we go into the mindset of this is what's going to happen,
Right.
that's when you get yourself in trouble, right? That I'm going to go into this deal projecting out what the borrower is going to do
Yes, exactly. And it's
and what I'm going to be able to do, right? Instead of saying, okay, what are the exit strategies that could happen? It's this is the exit strategy I'm targeting because this looks like a killer deal if it performs
right.
or when it performs, right? And we find out later, it may not be as good as we hoped, right?
Exactly.
And planning for the worst case scenario and hoping for the best is actually a better strategy, it sounds like.
Mhm. Yeah, that's definitely. I'm definitely taking notes for the
All right.
next time.
So, Larissa, how about yourself? What was go back to before you bought the note and today, what could you have educated yourself on what did even educators and and the person guide you through the process isn't in your shoes? What did you learn through that process?
Honestly, it's kind of a hard question for me, I guess, but
Okay.
I just wish I would have started earlier. I wish I would have taken that first step earlier, because I learned so much in the process that we all say that analysis paralysis. And so I feel like I was kind of stuck in that phase for too long. So I wish I just would have started before and then been not much further ahead. So is really where I'm
But
at.
now we're guessing numbers. Let's say you spend $5,000 on the deal. If that goes completely bonkers and whatever, are you happy with the education you got out of the process?
Yes, absolutely.
It makes you a better investor later. Right?
Yeah.
Brian, how about yourself? Before you bought those assets today, what would you wish if you're teaching yourself, what would you say to yourself? Forget whatever else says out there. This is what you need to know for those first purchases.
I consumed a lot of content on the steps to do,
Sure.
and due diligence I felt would have been my weak point, because I could calculate the numbers and I was comfortable with that. And then I know what to do, but I still didn't go through all the steps, and kind of, I think of the three of us, I didn't have a mentor or didn't do a class. It's just been,
Sure.
18-wheel university and teaching myself that way. So then I think, I can just go through the steps myself. And then, to my, not detriment, but the one thing I wish I would have done differently is follow through with all those steps.
Gotcha. So you had the steps in line, you just didn't follow. You jumped in.
Right, because I'd listened to
All the
20
podcasts.
people a week. Yeah, 20 people a week saying, you especially, Dave, I've consumed a lot of your content, Dave, and I love it. And it's you got to do this, and then I'd 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'd go 1, 3, 5.
Shortcuts.
Put in the bid.
Right? Shortcuts. And there are shortcuts you can take as you get more experience, so you know what to do, right? Talk to
Right.
the community, like somebody like Dave, I wouldn't do that. It's not worth my time. They've been buying notes as long as I have. But there's certain times that makes you feel comfortable. And when we invest, we want to make sure we feel comfortable, but we also have to we have to understand the fact that it's an investment and that there's risk level, and we have to take chances here. So we'll get some questions here. I'll start with Brian, go back. Are you using a servicer? Brian, you said before you're not. Are you self-servicing?
I am on this one, both on the personal loan that I have out. The check goes to my self-directed, but
Okay.
I have the records of that. The CFD that I have, it was with one of the major servicers, and at $30 a month, that was killing me. And when I reached out to the borrower, and we basically I didn't change any of the terms of the note, just kind of verbally went from what was going to be a 5+ year note down to probably going to be paid off in 18 months. That, she's like, can I just send you the checks directly? Supposedly she was having issues with them not, posting her payments and that sort of thing, and late payments, and, a month or two without a payment, and then she'd get caught up. So, she literally cash apps me, the payments, and I have a spreadsheet that I, put a line item in for the payment. The first of every month, I add in the interest. And again, I wouldn't recommend anyone do it this way, but that's how it's worked out. I have a good relationship with the borrower now, and so
Cool.
it should work its way out.
Larissa, are you using a servicer? Are you self-servicing? And how'd you find your servicer?
I am using a servicer. I do have just a list of servicers that I've heard, and done my own research on, but I decided to keep the note at the existing servicer. It was a well-known one already, maybe more expensive than some others that I heard, but because my note was already on like an ACH payment. I just decided to keep them flowing and not try to disrupt that at all.
It makes sense, right? My first note I bought, I kept the same servicer because it was easy, and,
Right.
and my first worry was, well, can I start an account that quickly? Like, I bought the loans coming to you. Can we get the paperwork going? Like, can we?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah.
sure, come on over. They love having you. Keep the money flowing in here, right? So yes,
Yeah.
I'm thinking back. I think my first notes were kind of just moved over, right? And then I actually introduced myself to new servicers by doing the same process, where I bought some more hedge funds or whatever, and I was going through SN. That's how, and just bounced around that way. So, Maria, are you using a servicer? Are you self-servicing?
I'm using a servicer.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd
It
you
was
find
a
them?
pre-existing servicer as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's whoever had the paperwork before, keep it there. They're willing to take my business. Cool deal. So,
Exactly.
and that's typically a problem with borrowers, right? If you change servicers, they just, well, where am I sending payment? Well, it's ACH. I got to change all of my bank records. Like, it can go a performing note can go non-performing just that simple change. It's crazy.
I've heard they can test you too to see
They
what they
can.
can get away with.
So one of the questions I got here is, when you did title search, what information were you looking for? The person's doing the research supply. I guess the question is, on your, I know Brian didn't do all this, right? But Maria, when you did your O&E report, your title report, what did you look for and how did you go get that title report?
So I don't even think I did that step.
Okay. Did you order O&E at all or title at all to see if there's any liens on the property?
So yes, I did that. Well, it was provided to me, and
Okay.
it was clear. It was clear.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just
you were good.
yes. So unfortunately, I know I should have double checked on my own research. Now I know, but I just went with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Larissa? Did you get an O&E? What you look for on the O&E that stood out to you going, oh, because looking at a sample or being in class, I've held those before where you have an O&E class and you teach everyone, and it's some kind of thing that's really not emotional, right? It's not yours. You don't care. You're kind of looking over and yeah. When you looked at that, what were you looking for?
The main things I was looking for to make sure like the chain was clear, like who had purchased it previously, who the owners were, and then to make sure there were no tax liens. I had already looked online, I think for the county and confirmed it not, but then it was nice to confirm that there were no liens.
Okay. Cool. Did you look at anything else on that O&E that stood out to you? Did you look at the documents attached or that kind of stuff?
It was pretty, this one specifically was very, like not much on it. Like
Okay.
it was pretty clear.
And did you?
I've seen other ones that had a lot more information, and I was kind of surprised that this one that didn't have very much.
Did you check Pacer at all?
I did not.
Okay, cool. Brian, how about yourself? Did you go right from seeing an asset online, buying it, and servicing it, and skipped everything else in the middle, or where'd you go? with that?
No, I had received the collateral file, and being a CFD, I did check because I think I was at least the fourth owner of the contract.
Okay.
So I did make sure that, okay, went from A to B, B to C, C to D, then to me. And I had a copy of the deed in the collateral file. And I think I did call the county to see if there were any liens on it. And they didn't have anything recorded on it. So
Did you check Pacer at all?
I did not, no.
And typical CFDs, you're not really checking Pacer. Really, it's not a huge deal for it as much because technically you're the lender, right? Ideally, you want to check it if you want to convert it or something, right? So
Right.
I'm not a big CFD person, but I understand the concept to a point. So you get this electronic collateral, which most people call it soft, and then you get the seller and says, listen, wire me the money. Brian, how do you feel about wiring this person that you may have seen a video or you talk on the phone money?
And
you
so
buy
I
a house
had,
anyway, and you go to buy a house with your wife, and you have escrow, you have this big title thing, you have a table, all the paper,
right.
and you get a purchase sale agreement sent to you electronically, DocuSign, and says, great, here's my wire instructions, send me money.
Yeah. So I asked him if we could do escrow, because I hadn't worked with him.
Sure.
And this is one thing that I kind of would recommend to people. During the whole process of the timeline and going through all the steps, I had some technical issues with PaperStack, so I had to reach out to their support, and I meant to remember the name of the guy that I spoke with on there. And so I wanted to do escrow with him, and he said, he's like, well, you know, I usually don't like to on the smaller balances, but I haven't worked with you before, so I'm cool with that. I mean, because it's $250 on each side for PaperStack to do the escrow. And through my contact with support, is it Brent at PaperStack?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was Brent that I had been talking with, and he contacted somebody else in the conversation and said, oh, it's this person, it's his note, and thought, okay, so if I had reached out maybe just to get a reference on who I was working with,
Sure.
then so if somebody else had, said, okay, yeah, this guy's legit, he's okay, then I wouldn't have bothered doing the escrow and would have felt comfortable with it. Still, when you're sitting down at the bank, getting ready to send $6,000 over
Yeah.
and hoping that everything goes out,
Yeah.
it's still nerve-wracking. There's no way around that.
How about yourself, Larissa? What was that wiring the money the first time? How'd you feel? What was your feelings? And I can tell you to your blue in your face, it's okay. Anyone can, but doing that without this typical buying a home or anything you purchase is typically a process. This is go to your bank, here's my numbers, and send it. How'd you
I mean,
feel?
I may have procrastinated a couple of hours to psych myself up.
It's like,
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking for sure. Just,
don't
I
tell
don't
you
know.
you're doing that, right? Like, I'm wiring money to somebody. You're doing what?
I felt fancy.
Right.
It's true, right?
Well, you always
I don't know
associate
why.
wiring money to something bad, it's something risky.
Yeah.
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 Whenever it says wire, you're thinking, "Oh, I'm wiring $1 million." You're right,
Right.
it's a fancy kind of thing. And then ACH is a kind of wire, but it's interesting you say that because I do agree with you, right? Wiring is something that you didn't do as a consumer or anything you did, right? You may do an ACH or a payment on a bill, but wiring money is a fancy dancy thing that it's just interesting, right? Like, and I think first time I bought a loan, I'm like, I'll send you a check. And you're like, no, we don't do checks. And I'm like, well, do you take cards? I have a debit. And I was trying to avoid it. Probably some of the cost, some of the effort, and like unsure. Like, am I gonna walk in the bank and know what I'm saying? What if I get stuck? Right? Cool.
And it's going to cost me $30 to send the money.
I didn't put that in my calculations, right?
Right.
Maria, how about yourself? What was your experience like sending the money for the first time?
So I was a little bit more confident because I was like, you know what, at least I'm not just sending it to someone's personal bank account. It was like the broker was like an established agency or company. So I was like, you know what, I'm okay doing this. So I went ahead and did it. I went to the bank. I couldn't do it on my own. So I went to the bank and they did it. And I had that at least to be confident about.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the collateral file, Maria, did you send it to your servicer? What happened with your collateral file?
So I did the opposite of what I was advised to do. I kept it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everyone she's saying is it's sitting in her house. So if you want to go rob her, so the collateral file's in your house, and we don't know what to do with collateral file, right? I think my first purchase, it's been 7 years, I think we're good, is I actually, once we were done with it, foreclosed a buddy of mine, JV, years ago, and we burnt it. We literally had a bonfire. And then we realized afterwards, you shouldn't have burnt it. Like, oh crap, right? We burnt the entire original file. It was a pain in the butt. We made money, we're joyed, and we burnt it. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. But when we had the collateral file, I think it was sent to the attorney. We started foreclosure right away. It's been a couple years. Larissa, what'd you do? Where did that's one of the questions, like, okay, here, what's your address for your business? What's your business name on the PSA? And it's like, okay, here's my routing instructions. And they say, who's your servicer and where do you want the cloud file? What'd you say or what'd you do there?
I might have a unique, it's kind of unique, but I travel full time, so I have to send it to my mail service and then have it forwarded to me. But I did want to look at it, and so I literally just got the text that it arrived at my mail service. So I will have it forwarded to me, but I wanted to look at it. I don't know. I could have probably just sent it straight to my servicer, but I just wanted to hold it, look at it.
Makes sense.
But my plan is to send it to my servicer to have them hold it
Sure.
for safety.
Okay, that makes sense, right? You can use bank things. You can get a file vault to your house. I know other investors do that. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like, listen, and if you guys haven't gone through too much, when files are needed immediately by an attorney and time is of the essence, and you're traveling or you're busy with life, having that with a servicer to be able to email over and yell at them if they don't send it, right, is available to you. And saying, listen, blah, blah. We've also sent, if we know, I know our friend Gabe, we'll send right to the attorney. Like, listen, just put the file with the attorney and let it sit there. Because I'm going to file foreclosure and I'm not saying you anything. You just have everything right there. There's collateral management companies. I know one of our questions, because we have assets for sale, is who's your collateral management company? And that's important. It could be your servicer, but there's also people out there who are full-time collateral management who can review that collateral file. That's my next question. But Brian, what'd you do with the collateral file when you got it?
I did get the hard copy of the file, and it was kind of cool to be able to look through the hard copies as opposed to the digital stuff. And it's at my house right now.
Boy, we got some places to go. No, good. And you record the assignments, I presume, right, everybody?
Yes. Yeah. I've been on the phone with the county several times. I sent the payment out to get them recorded, and one of the checks was made out wrong, so they sent the whole thing back to me, and that was quite the process too.
I apologize for the face. I'm now reliving my first time, and there was 3 assignments that had to be recorded from when I first bought it, and I remember mailing a cover letter and saying, I want this recorded in this order, and they recorded it in the wrong order. And then I had to go back and pay for them to redo it, and I sent in another cover letter, and they reported back, here it is, and they recorded it in a different order, but still the wrong order. So I was at a conference and I was talking to Kevin Cradell, and he's like, you have to put stickies on every one of them in order you want it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I spent all this time, money, and effort to do all this stuff to save no money because I recorded it 3 times. So it's crazy. So when you got the collateral file, Maria, did you send to an attorney? I know, Brian skipped over the whole process, but when you got that collateral file, did you send to an attorney? Did you look at the collateral file yourself? Did you send to somebody to review? How did you go through that review of the collateral?
So I looked at it myself because I was given the step-by-step process to review the collateral file. So like I felt like I was equipped to do it.
Okay.
But yeah.
You think you did a fair job?
Yeah, I think so. It made sense.
That's all that mattered. The chain was there. Chain was maybe off, whatever made me crazy, but the chain was there.
Right.
It's tough when you get that thing and you see a lot of legal stuff and you've got the trainings on it, but now it's yours. It's yours. It's your money going into this thing. How about yourself? Did you send it to a Collodio person? Who would you send it to review it? Or did you send it yourself?
Well, the physical I'm sending to myself, but when I reviewed like the soft copy, I feel confident with my mentor being as like a backup. Like I definitely did like the first review, and but like I said, I just had someone right there with me.
Okay. Did they help you review it? Or did you review it yourself? Okay.
Well, I reviewed it on my own, and then we kind of met and talked about it and kind of walked through and made sure I didn't miss anything. But I feel like I did a good job.
That's awesome. Hey, sometimes the best thing to do is to do it yourself just to learn, right? And have somebody catch you. Your fall. When we first got the cloud files, we reviewed ourselves unless something really crazy in there, or just time. We'll send a soft collateral to our attorneys sometimes, and just say, listen, just review it. Unless we have the time to do it, then we'll review it ourselves. and we'll pay the money for it, or you can get a collateral management company to review it. I know with CFD is a little different, right? Brian, did you review the collateral yourself?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of people here that are either way experienced or curious how the first time experienced people are, and some people who are in the process of analysis. What would you like from these people who've done a lot of deals to talk more about in what you've learned? And for the new person, what would you advise them? Also, Brian, what would you advise them to know or to work on before they get to it? So what would you tell somebody that's, in the space teaching people? What would you say that they need to teach more of or focus on more? And for the new person, what would you think that they need to learn?
The new person that they need to learn, I would say, using my own experience, if you feel like you've educated yourself enough on it, whether you have a mentor or a course or hundreds of hours of content,
Yeah.
at that point you know the steps that you're supposed to be taking.
Sure.
And so just continue with those, even if you have to write a list out and say, this is what I need to do, and check that off before you go on to the next thing. And even there's lots of Facebook groups out there too, and you see some of them that there are basic questions that are asked, and then I always felt like if I've consumed enough content and then I'm on a Facebook page and I'm able to answer the questions that people are asking, and I don't always feel good about this, but sometimes I look at a question and think that's a stupid question, but then I catch myself because we're all on a different timeline of where we're at.
Sure.
So if you're to the point where you're fairly educated and you're on Facebook groups and you can answer all those questions, then you need to be making the next step forward. Yeah.
And for those people out there that are doing what we're doing now, what should they focus on? Me as well. What should we focus on in the education part that we really need to help with buying the first note? What would be an idea of what would be something we should focus on?
I think some of the documentation, right now I'm looking more towards purchasing a note and then selling out partials or hypothecating against it. And as far as the partials, what are the documents that are needed for that?
Okay.
And I know with the hypothecation, the collateral assignment and things like that, but that's kind of where my point is right now. Okay, if I went and got another note and then want to go this next step to do a partial, then I'd kind of be walking blind again and
Sure.
would need that guidance.
So Larissa, what would be something that you want the new person to know, and what should the gurus, for lack of words, be talking more about that's missing?
For the newer person, I would say really just focusing on due diligence, maybe. Just making sure you know what you're looking for when you're reviewing the collateral and things like that.
Can you give an example?
Well, I guess just making sure the assignments are in order, and making sure that about any tax liens and things like that. Just making sure
Sure.
it is as it says it is before you make the purchase, and making sure you understand what you're looking for.
Cool. And then for the people who are teaching, you're someone that you're mentoring, you're switching your mentee. What's something that they sometimes maybe overlook or don't pay enough attention to in the education side of things that really should be taught more? You say, Miller, I could teach this now because I know it, and it should be taught more about.
I mean, when Brian was saying that about partials, I was like, yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know.
How about the process of buying
I'm
it?
just
Is
gonna
there something missing in all this stuff going on that's not talked about a lot in the process of buying that note, of either running numbers or collateral or what to do with the files or anything like that in that process?
I'm drawing a blank.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's right. If you don't have anything, it's good, right? It means the information's out there.
Mhm.
That's good.
If I may, Dave, one thing, I had to look up some YouTube videos on how to use the financial calculator, and I'd be trying to punch the numbers in, and everything's coming up zeros or errors, and wasn't sure how to input the information. Then, of course, once you watch a few videos, and the switch flips, and you're like, okay, and then then you just run it. You're practicing numbers just to get used to using it, and okay, I can change the interest rate, or I can change the payment, the months, and all that stuff, and it's really interesting how all that comes together.
We actually have a spreadsheet version of the calculator, right? Where you just it says payment. I have it online, and once our portal comes out, we have a spreadsheet where you just punch numbers in, and it'll say your purchase amount, right? PV, right? Your interest rate, your number of payments, or X, Y, and Z, and it goes down, and you can literally plug it in, and you know what it is, and the result shows up. Because the calculator is confusing, right? This fancy dancy thing has a bunch of symbols we've never seen before on it, right? And we're like, what? So, and we were talking, I guess it was 3 weeks ago in our investment community group about that. And it's like, it's the best way you work, right? The way I do things is different from everyone else. I'm a spreadsheet guy. I like plugging things in a spreadsheet and getting results. Some people like having that physical, instrument or a digital instrument of a calculator. I get lost on it, even though I know what I'm doing. I get lost on it. Spreadsheet's so much easier for me, but find what works for you, right? That's the best way to do it. If a calculator works, great. But remember, the calculator only works for performance, right? It doesn't calculate if it goes default. That's the downfall.
Right.
Maria, how about yourself? What would be something you wanted, that new investors should have known, or you would say to them, they were looking to get into this or buy their first note? And what should, some of the educators out there are missing on their education on buying their first note?
All right, so the calculations definitely something that should be talked about more during the education process. And something that they should know buying the first note would be practice due diligence as much as possible, and then also you want to be aware of the different exit strategies. Prepare, ahead of time for that, because you can learn from me. I went in just with one strategy in mind, and I was 100% sure that it would work. I don't know why. I didn't plan for like a second option. So definitely have a plan B when it comes to exit strategies. Yeah.
And it's weird you say that, because up to about, I'm going to say 3 years ago, my calculator avoided the whole idea of reinstatement. Maybe a little longer, 4 years ago. And I avoided it until it happened. And then I'm like, whoa, because I never think anyone reinstated. I mean, I mod everything, right? And reinstatement's something I didn't really count on for a long time. I don't know why I did. But then it happened, and we realized that we got a reinstatement amount, and the way the numbers ran, we really were stuck, because it was like a 3-4% coupon, and it dropped like 6.5, whatever the number was. And we're like, crap, I can't do anything with this loan, right? So reinstatement was one of the things we learned along the process that we missed in our calculator advanced. I've shown before my basic beginning calculator that I started in 2010 and what I have now. What a change. And it was strictly based on experience, where I missed, where I failed, calculating, foreclosure timeline for every state. There's people out there that still use a flat rate for foreclosure fees. I don't understand why. And flat time frame for foreclosures, where if you're in Texas versus Illinois or Chicago, you're completely different time frames. And somebody like, well, it's $5,000 across the board. Well, you try doing a foreclosure in Florida for $5,000. It ain't happening, right? So those are the kind of things that, people miss out on. And I agree with you guys. I think the calculations is huge, but you have to feel comfortable with those calculations, because as you go down that rabbit hole, you're getting more and more. Like right now, we're building out our statute of limitations in every scenario, so that our calculator can tell us flagging it for statute of limitations issues, because there's not, every state is not the same, and every state's situation is different from every other state. So one may go off last payment received, another may go off maturity, one may go off of a judgment, right? And one startup, when did you start foreclosure? Every state is different scenarios, which gets plugged back into the calculator, which is just nuts, right? So awesome. Well, this experience, guys, is really cool. I think this has really been helpful for a lot of people that are feeling they're alone. They're like by themselves going, oh my God, I don't think I can do it. As I said in the beginning, you guys are all experts in real estate, and this is why you did it. But knowing the fact that you guys did it and you made mistakes and you learned from it, it sounds to me is that, rule number one, don't be doing this with somebody else's money when you first get in. Because if you're doing it with someone else's money, you can get yourself in big trouble, right? If you're borrowing money at a certain rate and you didn't know what you're doing, get yourself in trouble because you're just learning. Partner up with someone. That's a great opportunity for people, right? And that's challenging too for both sides, right? Make sure you match. In our beginner series, we talk about finding that person because it's huge to help out. But at the same time, you got to make sure that when you do that, that you match understanding, the way they teach you, the way they guide you, and same way the other way, right? So awesome. Well, again, I want to thank you guys for joining me on this Friday afternoon, Friday morning for some of you guys, and just allowing others to listen to your journey. I think it's been really cool. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much. We'll be on next week as well, but I really appreciate you guys coming out. If you guys have any questions for you guys, they're all in our Facebook group and in our circle of friends. Feel free to reach out to them and enjoy, everyone. Thank you again for being on.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.